the state of the market, who needs E&O, how to analyze consultants and think like an underwriter. So, what do you need when you're collecting information from your client to make sure that we can service you the best if you're calling in, if you're web quoting, if you're sending it in through New England Access on a paper app, however you're accessing us. Learning about trending classes within E&O, and like I said, learning from real case studies, and then how to get a quote fast. Move to the next one whenever. Okay, so the state of the marketplace, we've seen a lot of price adjustments with rates with E&O. Different carriers are getting more aggressive with their E&O pricing. So, you might see discrepancy across the board in terms of, who's offering a package for a consultant at one price versus another price. And that's just important to really look and see, like, what are the coverages offering. So obviously money is the first thing that we look at, and it might be a little tighter these days, but, comparing apples to apples, making sure that you're really getting the adequate coverage that you need, depending upon who you're getting it from. New services left exposed to claims. So, a lot of times, especially with a consultant, we might see that they start off offering one particular service, and then as time goes on, maybe they pick up more services. So making sure that, and some of those services that may not be named that, on the original policy, making sure that, we understand the exposure, you understand the exposure so that your insured is properly covered. Social inflation. So, basically it's become an extremely litigious society, and insurers claims costs are increasing like above the general inflation. So, we are seeing, social inflation a lot on the employment practices liability side. I know we're talking about E&O, but it's really E&O, D&O. We're seeing a lot of very high payouts and a lot of policy time limit demands for the policy limit, and with a date where we need to respond, which can get insurance companies into bad faith situations. So you might just be leading into the size doesn't matter. You might think, oh, it's just one consultant, they're making $50,000 a year. But when it comes to a claim, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, because if the claim spirals into this policy time limit demand, it's really good to have that backing of a sound, financially stable insurance company that can handle all of that for the insured. A lot of what we see with E&O does come from a contractual requirement to carry E&O, to carry GL. I do want to mention, so a lot of times what we see on the professional liability team is somebody that's contractually required to have the general liability coverage, and that's really what they're looking for. But we're able to package it. So we can, do the E&O, do the GL, also with the business personal property. So we can kind of round it out, and, just, know that that is an option. Although for our team, the E&O is the driver of the account. So oftentimes we can offer, the whole package, and we could remove the GL, we could remove the property, but we have to keep the E&O intact. If you typically, we're going to go out with limits up to 2 million. If you have somebody that needs that $3, $4, $5 million limit, if they have that demand for higher limits, we can see a copy of the contract, see what services they're providing, and if it makes sense for us to offer those higher limits. We don't write excess E&O, but we can write primary E&O, and then we also write excess general liability coverage. So if we are writing the package, we can then offer the excess over the GL, but just the primary limits are going to be up to 5 million. Online quoting portals, this is something, we have the online quoting portal at USLI. A bunch of carriers have online quoting portals. So, that's kind of just, something that's a trend. I think, most carriers are going to have something where you can self-serve at this point. An increase in job openings, quality and longevity of life, increase in new technology professionals. A lot of these come with, just kind of like the aging population and people that are, retiring from a career that they've had for years at 65 and realizing there's still a lot of life to live, and then, going into maybe something into the consulting field in the area where they worked for years. So somebody retiring from education, then getting into consulting, or something like that. So that's kind of like through COVID, we saw more of that. I think people working from home too, and realizing, oh, maybe I could just stay home and do my own thing. So we've seen an uptick in that due to those different factors. And then technology, obviously, just like a booming industry, seeing more and more technology professionals, businesses, and then like one or two person technology consulting firms as well. And then an increase in ransomware claims. I was actually talking to the tech product leader, and she was saying that for a while we were actually seeing industry-wide ransomware claims had been down a little bit due to COVID and like the Ukraine-Russia war, and just better security practices, but they're starting to increase again over the past year, as well as social engineering claims, which is like that business email compromise, somebody trying to, build your trust and then basically enter your system. Whenever you're ready, Ryan, I can go to the next slide. Okay, so who needs errors and omissions coverage? So, it's negligence in rendering a professional service for a fee. So that's what our form's going to say. What is their professional service? And, when it comes to it, was there negligence when rendering that service? So, most of the time we're thinking of kind of like a white collar industry, technology, office administrative professionals, travel and event industry, design. You can read them all here: legal, education, academic, staffing, hospitality. So within all of these different, industry segments, USLI can help with classes within each of them. Now, I will say we are not a market for architects or engineers or lawyers, which are some of like the big ones that always come across our desk. But we kind of think of ourselves as like the layer below. So like not a lawyer, but a paralegal, or not an architect or engineer, but we can consider other design professionals such as interior designers, landscape architects, which we're actually going to have a claim for one of those later. But within this, we write classes within all of these different industries. Allied healthcare is a very, very booming industry right now. It's a product that we write that has grown exponentially over the past couple years. And then, obviously technology and our miscellaneous E&O product has grown a lot too. We can, consider from $1 in revenue up to 15 million. So there's a big wide range in like the products that we have within that to accommodate whatever the needs are of that applicant. So some of this I touched on earlier, but errors and omissions coverage up to 5 million. So that is our appetite. And like I said, we typically go out with 2, and then for 3, 4, 5, we need to see that contract. First and third party cyber coverage. So we do not write standalone cyber coverage anymore. However, we do weave cyber coverages into our E&O products. Definitely our technology product, our Protect product. There's sublimits on most of the E&O products. So, just because we don't write a cyber policy standalone doesn't mean that there isn't cyber coverage on most of the products that we offer. So just make sure that when you're looking at it, what it's covering and what it's not. Actually, on our Protect product, we have a $100,000 like cyber crime sublimit that we have written several policy limit sublimit checks for cyber crimes in the past year. So that definitely seems to be a trend as well. General liability and business personal property, I talked about the packaging capabilities that we have. So most of the products are going to have some availability to be packaged. And then within that, we offer hired and non-owned auto. We do offer those excess GL limits. So it's broad customizable coverage as long as you're understanding that the E&O, like I said before, is the driver of the account. And then admitted coverage available on most accounts. I know Vermont can be a tricky state. I know for our like nonprofit D&O, we're non-admitted. And then for some of our miscellaneous classes, I think there's something with the filing where like if you package a GL with a E&O for certain miscellaneous classes, it might flip it non-admitted, but for the most part, you're going to get an admitted product quote from us. Okay, so these are just some things we see on contracts up to those 5 million limits, needing a waiver of subrogation. Most of these are GL requirements, the blanket additional insured. We can do that on the E&O and the GL side. primary non-contributory wording, and then adding additional insured. So, if we write the package, they need the landlord listed, they need, the reason why they need the E&O is because they're entering into a contract with someone and doing work for them. They need that client wants to be listed. Those are all things that we can do as well. Okay, so, thinking like an underwriter, this is really just, if you're calling in, if you're getting on the portal and you're quoting, or you're, sending in an old-fashioned app, just like having some information up front is going to help you get the best experience on the back end from us too. Especially if you're talking to someone, I would say, like, SP, if you have a consultant, it can be like a little tricky, like just saying it's a consultant really isn't enough for us to know if it's something we can consider. We need that description of operations. Who are they working for? Are they a management consultant? Are they giving business advice? Are they facilitating mergers and acquisitions? Are they, getting funding? Are they, there could be so many different things. And within the miscellaneous E&O product, we do write 300 classes. And you're only going to see about 65 classes available on the miscellaneous E&O product on the web. So that's something I like to point out too, that just because you maybe go on to use the web, and if you are trying to quote a consultant and you don't see the specific one listed, that's a great opportunity to pick up the phone, because talking through a lot of that can be really helpful. And just knowing that just because you don't see it on the web doesn't mean that it's not something that we can do. Because we do offer more than what's available there. It's just a little overwhelming to put like 300 classes on the web. So getting that description of operations, licensing, certification, and background. So, a lot of times with us, the lines are a little blurred between allied healthcare, miscellaneous E&O. So it's like, are they licensed? Are they, licensed medical professional? Or are they really like more of a life coach that sometimes don't have really like much credentials at all? So knowing all of that is helpful. Like, are they a social worker? If they have a website, it's very helpful. When I was underwriting E&O a lot, I kind of like lived on the LinkedIn profile, because I think a lot of times when we create something ourselves and tell a story about what we're doing ourselves, it's helpful to kind of read that and, how does this person describe themselves and what they're doing? If they're new and they don't have previous experience, we're likely going to be looking for a resume, or something just to help us, figure out what it is that they're doing. And what is the definition of the professional service that the applicant wants? So sometimes, we have general terms that we use, like management consultant, but they want to be, listed a specific way for specific services that they're providing. And we are willing to kind of tweak that a little bit to make it either be abiding by the contract that they have, or, however they, need it to look, as long as we're comfortable with it. And then just we need revenue. That's a 12-month estimate, even for startups. So making sure we kind of have an idea of how much they're making, number of employees and independent contractors. So is it them? Do they have, 3 ICs that work for them? And then just the entity name, or maybe they're operating as themselves with a location. Although they can be they can be in Vermont, but be working all up and down the East Coast, or potentially doing work throughout the United States, and it's going to follow them. It's not going to be just a designated premise. So that's important to note as well. Okay, so just some trending classes that we selected here that we've been seeing. Not only is there a big industry, but we've been seeing a lot of success with them. So coaching services, there's a lot within this: business coaching, leadership, executive, career, life coach, like I said before. It's apparently a $2.8 billion industry. And there's been an increase in business coaches over the past couple years. I said before, a lot of people kind of doing their own thing, whether it's their primary job, whether it's kind of a side hustle, wellness coaching, life coaching, all of those different things. It seems like that is growing very rapidly. 3-month period at USLI yielded 335 coaching submissions. And we put these stats about the lawyer because we do offer, with a USLI policy, our Business Resource Center, which is going to offer value-added services, consulting with an attorney. So these types of things that you would get with the policy are very, very beneficial, especially if you need a lawyer at some point and you're ending up paying out of pocket just to talk to them for 30 minutes, or maybe needing more legal support. And then this little statistics just about an average human makes, 773,000 decisions in their lifetime and will come to regret 143,000 of them. Business coaches are only human, right? So someone giving you advice, sometimes it's not good advice. And what was the issue with that led to whatever, the person that you gave that advice to having that issue? Is that going to turn into a claim? So, we're all only human. Mistakes can be made. So that's why it is important to be covered. And it's a very easy class to quote over the phone and the web. Training specialists, we write a ton of training specialists. This could be anyone from we don't do on the road driving instructors, but we do like classroom driving instructors, or we do, someone training on whatever the heck they're good at and somebody wants to listen, but we write a lot of training specialists. Another class that's increasing quite frequently. You have a few states that have the highest employment levels of training specialists. It can include education, insurance, real estate, technical skills, computers, careers, like career coaches, human resources, so many more. So all, we write them all and they're very competitively priced as well. Staffing services. So staffing is a huge industry. Our staffing product does cover the placed employees. So we're just going to look at the type of employees that are being placed. Are they more white collar? Are they more hospitality? Like, what are they doing? And that kind of does affect like whether or not we can offer a package with it or not. But this is a huge class for us. And we do when they're placing like high executives down to, restaurant workers, more like artisan contractors, more of what you consider that blue collar type work. So this is a big class for us and has always been a big selling class at USLI. And then I mentioned before paralegals. So while we don't write attorneys, we do write paralegals. Paralegals is one of the 100 best jobs in America, and currently 300,000 employed. Oftentimes when you have like these one person paralegals, they may work for like a law firm, but they're required to have their own insurance because they might be kind of bouncing around. They're not brought on as an employee, they're brought on as a contractor. And when they're brought on as a contractor, that's when they're, being asked to carry their own insurance. And because of like a COVID backlog of all these court cases and all of that stuff, we're almost seeing that increase more over time. It's also, more of like a job that you can kind of get into at any time, which is another reason why it's been growing quite rapidly. And another class that we have on here that we've been seeing a lot of that we don't have listed, but is teachers as well. I think we get asked a lot if we rate teachers, and we do. We see a lot of times if teachers elect to not be a part of the union, they're required to have their own insurance. So that is a class that we can consider as well, in addition to tutors. And that has been growing rapidly as well. Okay, a couple of case studies here. So this just really drives home, like I was saying before, like how expensive these claims can get and why it is so important to have, an insurance company that is the one handling it for your, for your applicant, for your insured. An interior designer with a $1 million limit, and there was a claim that the insured did not like check in with the plaintiff as much as they were expecting. Our insured, so there was like some, difficulty there with the working relationship. Our insured ended up resigning, terminated his contract, and the client sued our insured. So the demand was initially $180,000. It ended up at $980,000. There's probably about 100 pages of notes in between that 180 and 980. But the duration of this claim was 3 years long. So just look at the legal fees. I mean, you're looking at 400 some $1,000 on what you think, originally it looks like it could be something frivolous, just a little disagreement, and it can get really, really ugly. A landscape architect. So the city requesting fixing of cracks on a trail that was designed by our insured. The insured's design called for joints every 8 weeks, but the workers put them in every 40 feet. So they got brought into the suit with the general contractor and the engineers and the landscape architect. That's what happens. They all get named in these suits, even if their design was correct. The way that it was executed was not. So the demand started at 880, moved to 1 million, which is the policy limit, as you can see. And the settlement ended up at 367,500 after 4 years, and that did not include the legal fees. So getting up close to the policy limit there as well. And a technology professional. So this was the alleging of our insured's e-discovering services that they created, and a lack of all info facts made the superintendent look guilty of things that the insured claims are not true. So you can kind of see the argument here. The demand was $3 million, which is, again, the policy limit demand, a $0 deductible. And this has an undecided settlement, and we've accrued $444,000 in legal fees over the past 6 years. So okay, yes, and I can address this at the end. So I think that's our last case study. And then I just had a question from Evan. So yeah, do you have an example of when a staffing? So say the staffing agency that we write places an accountant at an accounting firm, like during tax season, just as a for a short period of time, like a temp staffing. You see all of these, like, during tax season, all of those ads on the TV, like Indeed or whatever. And that temporary staff member makes an error on someone's tax returns, and they end up suing the company that, the temp staffer was working for during that period of time. And then that person that they work for is going to turn around and say, well, you placed him here, like you have liability too, because you did the vetting and you said that this person was sound, and there ended up being a mistake. So they're likely going to get brought into that, or they're going to end up, the company that the temp staff member worked for is going to end up likely trying to subrogate against the staffing company. So that's typically how that all works.
Excellent. Before we move on to this, I'm curious, do you have, I don't know if it's in the Business Resource Center, would you have any advice for how to find some of these types of customers? It looks like there's a lot of them around the country, just the specific examples you gave here, but just any strategies for, an agent that's looking to sort of specialize and kind of market to these folks?
Yeah, I mean, that can be tough. I mean, we do have a lot of, we have agents and customers that like focus on certain classes of business, like they only write accountants, or, so they kind of become known for certain classes of business or a niche. When I've kind of been like just over the years, like looking for certain leads, like I don't think you can underestimate a good old like Google search in your area and your zip code as to like what how many training specialists you have, or stuff like that. But I do think it does take time to kind of like develop what a potential niche might be. I mean, like on the EPL side, like we always say, like, can you go and look at somebody like a franchisor, and so they're writing franchise business. There's a franchise business, there's a contractual requirement. So like looking for those little places where there would be that need for a contractual requirement, because those are easier ways to sell if someone is required to carry it. Obviously on like the GL side, it always comes down to the landlord or whatever, but E&O can be a little trickier. So I would probably have to think about that a little more, like a place to start to kind of find like, what do you want to focus on? Because I think it can be very, it's a broad to think, and then we're just talking about miscellaneous E&O for the most part here. I mean, we write real estate agents, insurance agents, property managers. So, there are a bunch of different kind of ways that you could go. Like if you want to focus on real estate and property managers and see if there's an opportunity there, instead of, just like, I'm going to just focus on E&O overall and see what happens. I think kind of like figuring out a little niche is probably the best way to get started.